The highway stretched endlessly before Jenna, a serpent of cracked asphalt swallowed by the dense pine forests of northern Montana. Her hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened, the hum of her old Honda's engine the only sound in the eerie silence. She'd been driving for 9 hours straight, fleeing the jagged memories of a life she could no longer bear, a boyfriend whose fists spoke louder than his apologies, a cramped apartment that reeked of stale beer and dread. The road was supposed to be her salvation. But as the last sliver of sunlight dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and grays, Jenna felt the first icy trickle of unease. The gaslight had blinked on 10 miles back. The station appeared like a mirage, a lone, flickering neon sign reading, "Roy's Pit Stop," buzzing weakly against the gathering dark. The building was a relic of the 70s, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin, the windows boarded up except for a single square of grimy glass near the entrance. Jenna pulled up to the rusted pump, her headlights cutting through the thick haze of moths swirling in the damp air. The smell hit her first, a nauseating cocktail of gasoline and something sweetly rotten, like forgotten fruit left to ferment. She hesitated, glancing at the shadowed tree line. The forest here felt watchful. She stepped out, the crunch of gravel beneath her boots unnaturally loud. A flicker of movement in her periphery, a figure, made her whirl around, heart slamming against her ribs. Nothing, just the skeletal branches swaying in the wind. Shaking her head, she grabbed the gas nozzle, her breath visible in the sudden chill. That's when she saw him. A man leaned against a black pickup truck 2 pumps over, his face obscured by a baseball cap, his posture unnervingly still. Jenna's throat tightened. He wasn't there a second ago. Forcing herself not to stare, she focused on the pump's screeching dials. The numbers climbed too slowly. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, but the next town was 50 miles away. She'd never make it. Swallowing hard, she hurried inside to prepay, the bell above the door jingling like a funeral dirge. The store was a time capsule. Faded chip bags lined dusty shelves. A single fluorescent light buzzed like a dying insect. No cashier. Jenna's boots stuck to the floor with every step, the air thick with the tang of motor oil and mildew. "Hello," she called, her voice swallowed by the silence. The backroom door hung ajar, darkness pooling beyond it. Her pulse throbbed in her ears. A floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around. The man from the pump stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the neon sign. His face was gaunt, eyes sunken and glittering like chips of obsidian. He smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. "Need help?" he drawled, stepping inside. Jenna backed toward the counter, her hip bumping a rack of keychains that clattered like bones. "Just paying for gas," she said too brightly. Her fingers fumbled for her wallet, but the man was already circling the aisle, trailing a finger along the shelves. "Long way from anywhere," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "You ought to be careful. Folks go missing out here." Her breath hitched. She tossed a $20 bill on the counter and bolted for the door, but he moved faster, blocking her path. Up close, she caught the stench of him. Sour sweat and something metallic. His hand shot out, grasping her wrist. "Where you headed, darlin'?" Jenna yanked free, adrenaline scorching through her veins. "Don't touch me!" She ducked past him, bursting outside into the suffocating dark. The Honda was only 20 feet away. 20 feet. She sprinted, keys jangling in her trembling hand. The driver's side door was already open. A figure sat inside, face shadowed, hands on the wheel. Jenna froze. No. Behind her, the man from the store laughed, low and guttural. "Ain't you gonna thank me for the gas?" She didn't think, she ran. The forest swallowed her whole, branches clawing at her face, her lungs burning as she stumbled through the underbrush. Distant laughter echoed behind her. She didn't dare look back. Moonlight filtered through the trees, painting the ground in fractured silver, and for one delirious moment she thought she might escape. A hand clamped over her mouth, yanking her behind a tree. "Shh!" a voice hissed in her ear. Female. Jenna thrashed, but the woman, mid-30s, wild-eyed, her flannel shirt smeared with dirt, tightened her grip. "You want to die? Listen, there's two of them. They've got a system. One lures you, the other traps you. They took my husband an hour ago." Jenna's tears soaked the woman's palm. She nodded, and the stranger released her, pointing to a dilapidated shed half buried in ivy. "Hide there, I'll draw them off." The shed stank of mold and rusted metal. Jenna crouched behind a stack of rotting tires, her phone trembling in her hand. No signal. Minutes crawled by, then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. A flashlight beam sliced through the cracks in the walls. Jenna pressed a hand to her mouth, choking back a sob. The door creaked open. "Found you," the man from the gas station whispered. Jenna exploded into motion, scrambling past him, his nails raking her arm as she fled. She didn't stop, didn't breathe, until she burst onto a narrow road. Headlights approached, a semi-truck. She waved frantically, collapsing to her knees as it screeched to a halt. The driver, a burly man with a beard, leaned out. "You okay?" "They're after me, please." "Get in," he said. The smell of coffee and diesel fuel wrapping around her like a shield. The driver glanced in his mirrors. Seatbelt, now. As the truck accelerated, Jenna sagged against the seat, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought—" The driver's hand closed over hers. His grip was vice-tight. "You thought wrong," he said softly, nodding to the walkie-talkie crackling on the dash. A familiar voice rasped through the static. "You get her, Roy." The man from the gas station chuckled. "Oh, I got her." Jenna's scream died as the needle plunged into her neck. She woke in darkness, her head throbbing, the stench of gasoline and blood thick in the air. Concrete floor, metal walls, a shipping container. Across from her, the wild-eyed woman from the woods lay motionless, a jagged wound splitting her throat. Jenna's wrists were bound with zip ties, her ankles raw from kicking. Voices outside. "Gotta move her before dawn. Cops will be sniffing around after that trucker called in a disturbance." "What about the husband?" "Dump him with the others." Jenna's mind raced. The trucker had saved her, hadn't he? Unless the call was a setup. Her stomach lurched. She'd heard the voice on the walkie-talkie, but what if the real police were coming? False hope is a knife, she thought, biting back hysteria. A sliver of light appeared as the container door cracked open. Jenna played dead, her breath shallow. Boots clanged against metal. "This one's still out," the man Roy grunted. "Check her pulse." Jenna waited until his fingers grazed her neck. Then she struck, sinking her teeth into his hand. He howled, recoiling, and she rolled, scrambling past him through the door. Dawn's first light blinded her. She was at the gas station again, the semi-truck idling nearby. The shipping container was hidden behind the store. She ran, zigzagging through the trees, Roy's enraged screams fueling her. A gunshot rang out. Birds erupted from the branches above. Jenna's side blazed where a bullet grazed her, but she didn't stop. The highway, she could see it through the trees. A car approached. Jenna stumbled into the road, waving her arms. The sedan swerved, braking hard. A middle-aged couple stared at her, horrified. "Help me," Jenna croaked, collapsing against their hood. "Please." The woman dialed 911, her voice shaking. Jenna huddled in the back seat, watching the forest recede in the rearview mirror. Roy's truck sat abandoned at the gas station. But as the car sped toward the hospital, the driver's eyes flicked to hers in the mirror. "You're safe now," he said. His wife's hand tightened on his arm. She watched the road ahead, every shadow now a threat, every stranger's kindness a lie. The fear had burrowed into her bones. It would never leave. At the hospital, wrapped in a thin blanket and trembling beneath the sterile white lights, Jenna sat on the edge of the bed as two detectives stepped into the room. Their uniforms were smudged with dirt, their faces pale and drawn. One of them, an older man with tired eyes, pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "We believe you," he said quietly, his voice heavy. "We just came back from the site. That gas station and the cabin, they're connected. We've found remains, multiple victims. It's a dump site." Jenna's breath caught in her throat. The detective looked at her with something deeper than pity, something closer to horror. "This wasn't just some random creep. He's done this before. We think for years. You're the first one who got away." The words settled into her like ice, and for a long moment she couldn't speak. The other officer added, "If you hadn't gotten out when you did, Jenna, you were lucky. You were the one who broke the pattern. You survived something that no one else has." Jenna stared at them, her vision blurring. Lucky, that's what they called it. But all she could hear was the faint, slow whistle in the back of her mind, and she knew it would never really stop. If you enjoyed Jenna's harrowing escape, don't forget to subscribe for more true horror stories that will make you think twice about stopping in the middle of nowhere. And remember, not every gas station is just a gas station, and not every driver who offers you help wants you to make it home.
Next story.
Lila had always been drawn to the woods behind her grandmother's house. Even as a child, she would press her face against the kitchen window, watching the trees sway in the wind like shadowy giants whispering secrets to one another. Her grandmother had warned her never to venture too far in. "Those woods have a way of keeping things," she'd say, her voice low and grave. But Lila was 17 now, spirited and stubborn, and the mystery of the forest called to her like a siren's song. It started with small things, a rustling in the bushes just a little too close, the faint crunch of footsteps when she knew she was alone. She told herself it was just animals, the wind, her imagination running wild, but then came the gifts. The first one appeared on her windowsill one misty morning, a single white wildflower, its petals damp with dew. Lila had stared at it, her stomach twisting. She lived on the second floor. There was no way the wind had placed it there. Days passed, and the gifts grew more unsettling. A twisted bundle of twigs tied with red string, a smooth, dark stone with her initials crudely carved into it. And then, the worst of all, a Polaroid slipped under her door. In it, she was standing at the edge of the woods, completely unaware, her back to the camera. The photo was dated 3 days prior. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps as she turned it over. On the back, in jagged, uneven letters, was written, "You're even prettier up close." That was the moment the fear truly took root. Lila told her parents, but they dismissed it as a prank. Maybe one of the boys from school trying to scare her. The police were no better. Without a direct threat, there was little they could do. So Lila did the only thing she could think of. She armed herself with pepper spray and a pocket knife, and she decided to find out who was watching her. The woods were different that day. The sunlight barely pierced the thick canopy, casting everything in a sickly green gloom. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else something metallic and sour that made her nose wrinkle. She followed the overgrown trail deeper in, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure whoever was out there could hear it. Then she saw it. Cabin. It was small, sagging with age, its wooden walls blackened by mildew and rot. The windows were boarded up, except for one, a single pane of glass, cracked and grimy, reflecting the dim light like a dead, staring eye. The front door hung slightly ajar, creaking softly in the breeze. Leela's instincts screamed at her to run, but something compelled her forward. She needed to know. She had to know. The inside of the cabin was worse. The stench hit her first. Mold, sweat, and something cloyingly sweet like rotting fruit. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings, maps, and her blood turned to ice. Photos. Dozens of them. All of her. Walking to school, laughing with friends, sleeping in her bed. A choked sob escaped her throat as she stumbled back, her legs trembling. That's when she heard it. The soft creak of a floorboard behind her. She wasn't alone. The man stood in the doorway, his silhouette blocking the light. He was tall, gaunt, his face shadowed beneath a hood. But she could see his smile, too wide, too eager. "You finally came," he breathed, taking a step forward. Lila didn't think. She moved. She bolted past him, her shoulders slamming into the doorframe as she burst outside. The woods blurred around her as she ran, branches clawing at her arms, her breath coming in ragged, terrified gasps. Behind her, she could hear him, his footsteps pounding against the earth, his voice a low, guttural growl. "Lila, you can't run forever." She didn't stop. She couldn't. She tripped over a root, crashing hard onto the ground, pain shooting up her leg. The footsteps grew closer. She scrambled behind a thick oak, pressing herself against the bark, her entire body shaking. He was there, right there. She could hear his ragged breathing, smell the sour tang of his sweat. "Where are you, little bird?" he cooed, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. Lila clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a whimper. A twig snapped inches from her hiding spot. Then a distant shout her name. Her father. The man froze. For one endless second, Lila thought he would find her anyway, drag her back into the dark. But then, with a frustrated snarl, he turned and vanished into the trees. Lila didn't move until she heard her father's voice again, closer this time. When she finally stumbled into his arms, she was sobbing, her body racked with tremors. The police searched the woods. They found the cabin, but the man and all the photos were gone. Lila never went back into the woods, but sometimes late at night she'd wake to the sound of her window creaking open, and on the sill, a single white wildflower, its petals glistening with dew. If you enjoyed Lila's chilling fight for survival, don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales that will haunt your nights. And remember, just because you escape the woods doesn't mean the woods escape you. Some secrets don't stay buried, and some watchers never blink.
Next story.
The night started like any other for Claire Bennett. The air outside was thick with the damp chill of early autumn, the kind that clung to your skin and whispered of coming winter. Streetlights buzzed faintly, their orange glow cutting through the mist that curled along the sidewalk. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm warbled, then died. Claire pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders as she stepped into the dim warmth of the hollow lantern, the kind of bar that existed in that perfect middle ground. Not too divey, not too pretentious, just a place to unwind after another long week at the marketing firm where she spent her days drowning in spreadsheets and coffee. She took her usual seat at the far end of the bar, where the light was just dim enough to make her feel anonymous. The bartender, a burly guy named Rick with a tattoo of a ship's wheel on his forearm, nodded at her as she settled in. "Usual?" he asked. Claire smiled. "Please." The first sip of her gin and tonic was crisp, cold, perfect. She let herself exhale, scrolling mindlessly through her phone, half listening to the murmur of conversations around her, the laughter of a group at the pool table, the low hum of some indie song playing just a little too quietly over the speakers. That's when she felt it, the weight of eyes on her. She glanced up and there he was. A man, mid-30s maybe, dark hair, slightly too long, curling at the ends, a sharp jawline, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was leaning against the bar a few stools down, watching her with an intensity that made her fingers tighten around her glass. Claire looked away, but a moment later, the stool beside her creaked as he sat down. "You come here often?" His voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice that had asked this question before. Claire forced a polite smile. "Sometimes." "I've seen you before," he said, swirling the ice in his whiskey glass. "Claire, right?" Her stomach dropped. She didn't recognize him. Not at all. "Do we know each other?" she asked carefully. He chuckled low and easy. No, just good with names. Heard the bartender say it." A lie. Rick hadn't said her name tonight. Claire took another sip of her drink, her pulse ticking up just a little. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending a hand. She didn't take it. "I'm just here to relax," she said, her voice firmer now, alone. Daniel's smile didn't waver. If anything, it sharpened. "Come on," he said, leaning in slightly. "One drink, just conversation." "No, thank you." The words were clear, final. But Daniel didn't move. His gaze lingered on her face a beat too long before he finally leaned back, raising his hands in mock surrender. All right, no pressure." But the way he said it, like it was a game, like her no was just part of some script he knew how to navigate, made her skin prickle. Claire finished her drink quickly after that, avoiding his eyes, the weight of his stare burning into her like a brand. She paid in cash, leaving a generous tip for Rick, and slid off the stool. She didn't look back as she pushed through the door into the night. But she felt it, the shift in the air, the certainty deep in her bones that she wasn't alone. The walk home was only 10 minutes. Claire told herself she was being paranoid, that the man Daniel was just another guy who didn't know how to take a hint, that the chill running down her spine was just the autumn wind. But then she heard it. Footsteps, matching her pace. She slowed, they slowed. She sped up, so did they. Claire's breath hitched. She dared a glance over her shoulder. The street was empty. Just your imagination, she told herself. Just the echo of your own steps. But then, a shadow, movement in the corner of her eye, slipping behind a parked car. Her heart hammered. She fumbled for her phone, thumb hovering over 911. But what would she say? "I think someone's following me." She had no proof, no real threat, just a feeling. Claire picked up her pace, her apartment building now in sight, just a little farther. The lobby was blessedly warm, the fluorescent lights humming overhead as she swiped her key fob and hurried inside. She jabbed the elevator button, glancing back at the glass doors. No one. The elevator dinged. She stepped in, pressing the button for the 4th floor, her pulse still racing. The doors began to close. Then a hand shot out, stopping them. Claire's breath caught in her throat. A man stepped inside, not Daniel, just her neighbor, Mr. Perkins, an elderly man with a cane who always smelled like peppermints. "Evening, Claire," he said with a kind smile. She nearly sobbed in relief. The rest of the night passed in uneasy quiet. Claire double-locked her door, checked the windows, peered through the peephole into the empty hallway. Nothing. She told herself she was overreacting. But then, a knock. Saw almost hesitant. Claire froze. Another knock. She crept toward the door, standing on her toes to peer through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Then, a whisper. "Claire." Her blood turned to ice. It was him, Daniel. She didn't know how he'd found her. Didn't know how long he'd been standing there. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't leaving. Claire's breath stopped in her chest. The whisper had been so quiet, so intimate, like Daniel's lips were pressed against the door, like he already knew she was there on the other side, trembling. "Claire!" Again, she stumbled back, her socked feet silent on the hardwood. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her phone. 911, call 911. But what if she was wrong? What if she was just paranoid, and she called the cops on some innocent guy who happened to say her name? Then, creak. The doorknob twisted. Just slightly testing. The deadbolt held. Claire's pulse roared in her ears. She dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm. "What's your emergency?" There's a man at my door," Claire whispered, her voice cracking. "He followed me home from a bar. He won't leave." "What's your address?" She rattled it off, her eyes locked on the door. Then, silent. No more knocks, no whispers. Had he left? Claire crept forward, pressing her ear against the wood. Nothing. She risked a glance through the peephole. Empty hallway. "Ma'am," the operator said, "are you still there?" "He's gone," Claire breathed. "I think he's gone." But the relief was short-lived, because then she heard it. A click from the bedroom window. The apartment was on the 4th floor. No one could climb that high. No one. But the sound came again, metal on metal, like someone was prying at the latch. Claire's stomach dropped. The fire escape. She'd never used it, never even thought about it. But now, with sickening clarity, she realized it was a way in. "He's at my window," she hissed into the phone. "Oh God, he's trying to get in." "Police are on their way," the operator said. "Stay on the line." Claire didn't answer. She was already moving. Her bedroom door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, she could see the window, the curtains fluttering. Not from the wind. From movement. Someone was out there. She backed away, her breath coming in sharp, silent gasps. The bathroom. It was the only room with a lock. She slipped inside, shutting the door as quietly as possible, twisting the bolt. Then she crouched in the tub, phone clutched in her hands, listening. For a long moment, nothing. Then, thud. The window sliding open. Footsteps. In her bedroom. Claire bit down on her fist to keep from screaming. The footsteps paused, then moved closer. Daniel's voice soft, almost amused. "Claire, where are you?" The bathroom doorknob twisted. Claire's entire body locked in pure electric terror. The bolt held, for now. Then, a knock. Light, almost playful. "Claire A." Daniel sang her name like it was a joke, only he understood. You can't stay in there forever. Her phone screen lit up, the 911 operator's voice barely audible. "Ma'am, are you still there? Police are 2 minutes out." Claire didn't dare answer. Daniel would hear her. She muted the call instead, her fingers slick with sweat. A thump against the door, his shoulder, his fist. "Come on," he sighed, like she was being difficult. "You invited me in." She hadn't, she'd never. Another thud, harder this time, the door frame shuddered. Claire scanned the bathroom desperately. No windows, no weapons except a rusted razor blade left by the last tenant. She grabbed it, the metal biting into her palm. Then, a crack, wood splintering. The door burst open. Daniel stood there, silhouetted in the dim light, his face half-shadowed. He was smiling. Claire lunged. The razor blade slashed across his forearm. He hissed, more surprised than hurt, and backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded behind her eyes. She crumpled against the tub, tasting blood. Daniel crouched over her, gripping her hair. "You're gonna regret that," he whispered. Then, sirens. Close. Daniel's head snapped up, his grip loosened, just for a second. Claire moved. She kneed him between the legs, hard. He gagged, doubling over, and she scrambled past him, slipping in her socks, crashing into the hallway. The front door was still locked. She fumbled with the chain. A hand grabbed her ankle, yanked. Claire screamed, kicking wildly, her nails clawing at the carpet as Daniel dragged her back. No. His breath was hot on her neck. Then, pounding on the front door, "Police, open up!" Claire screamed again, raw, guttural, and his grip faltered. He shoved her away, bolting for the bedroom. The cops kicked the door in, just as Claire heard the scrape of the fire escape. But Daniel was gone. They never caught him. No fingerprints, no DNA, just a shadow in the night. Claire moved, changed her name, sleeps with a knife under her pillow. But sometimes when the phone rings at 2 a.m., no one's there. And sometimes when she walks past a bar, she swears she sees him, smiling, waiting, because men like Daniel, they never leave. If you enjoyed this chilling tale of survival, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story to keep you up at night. Remember, trust your instincts, stay aware, and always lock your doors.
Next story.
The rain had been falling for hours by the time Sarah locked the door behind her. A steady, rhythmic drumming against the windows of her third-floor apartment. The kind of rain that made the world outside feel distant, muffled, like a secret whispered under a blanket. She exhaled, shaking the damp from her coat before hanging it on the hook by the door. Another quiet evening alone. She liked the quiet, at least that's what she told herself. The apartment was small but cozy. A living room with a sagging couch, a kitchenette just big enough for one, and a narrow hallway leading to her bedroom and bathroom. The walls were thin. Sometimes she could hear the neighbor's TV through them, a low murmur of late-night infomercials. But tonight, there was only the rain. Sarah filled a glass of water, the tap groaning as she twisted it shut. She glanced at the clock. 8:47 p.m. Too early for bed, too late to start anything productive. She settled onto the couch, pulling her laptop onto her knees, the glow of the screen casting sharp shadows across her face. Then the knock. A single firm rap at the door. Sarah froze. No one ever knocked. Not here. not unless it was a package, and the delivery guys always left those downstairs by the mailboxes. Another knock, harder this time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Maybe it was Mrs. Grady from across the hall, needing sugar, or complaining about the noise that wasn't there. She stood, creeping toward the door, her socked feet silent on the hardwood. The peephole was foggy, warped with age, but she could make out the shape of a man standing in the hallway. Broad shoulders, a dark cap pulled low. "Hello," she called through the door, her voice tighter than she meant it to be. "Maintenance," came the reply, gruff, matter-of-fact. "Got a report of a leak in the unit below yours. Gotta check your pipes." Sarah frowned. No notice, no call from the building manager, and the way he said it, not a request, a statement. "I didn't hear anything about that," she said. A pause, then a sigh like she was inconveniencing him. "Look, lady, I don't make the rules. If you want to deal with water damage, that's on you, but my boss sent me here to fix it." Her fingers curled around the deadbolt. Something prickled at the back of her neck, a whisper of wrongness. But what if there was a leak? What if she was being paranoid? She unlatched the door. The man was taller up close. His uniform was dark blue, a patch on the sleeve with a logo she didn't recognize. His face was unreadable, not quite smiling, not quite scowling, just waiting. "Where's the bathroom?" he asked, stepping inside before she could answer. The door clicked shut behind him, and just like that, the air changed. Sarah's pulse jumped as he brushed past her, his shoulder grazing hers. Too close, too intentional. She could smell the damp leather of his work gloves, the faint metallic tang of something she couldn't name. "It's down the hall," she managed, forcing her feet to follow him. He moved like he already knew the layout. The bathroom was small, the faucet dripping steadily into the sink. The repairman crouched, running a hand along the pipes beneath. Sarah hovered in the doorway, arms crossed tight over her chest. "Don't see any leaks here," he muttered. Then, after a beat, "Gotta check the kitchen, too." He stood abruptly, and Sarah barely sidestepped in time to avoid his bulk filling the doorway. Her breath hitched as he passed, his eyes flicked to hers, just for a second. Something cold slithered down her spine. The kitchen inspection was quicker. He barely glanced under the sink before straightening, wiping his hands on his pants. "All good here." Sarah nodded, already stepping toward the front door, her fingers itching to yank it open. "Great, thanks for checking." But he didn't move. He just stared at her, at the apartment, at the door. Then, "You live here alone?" The question hung in the air like a struck match. Sarah's mouth went dry. "My roommate's asleep," she lied. "Works nights." The repairman's lips twitched. Not a smile. Something worse. "Funny, landlord said this was a solo unit." Her stomach dropped. A creak from the hallway, the floorboard near her bedroom that always groaned underfoot. Except she hadn't stepped on it. The repairman's head tilted, listening. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Move, run, scream. But her legs were locked in place, her breath coming in shallow, silent hitches. Then his hand dipped into his tool belt. A glint of metal. A wrench. Or a knife. She didn't wait to find out. Sarah spun, bolting for the door, but he was faster. A hand clamped over her mouth, yanking her back against his chest. Hot breath against her ear. "Shh!" The world narrowed to the pounding of her heart, the iron grip around her waist, the dizzying realization. He's done this before. And then the lights went out. Darkness. Not the soft, familiar dark of a bedroom at night, but a suffocating, ink-black void. the kind that pressed against Sarah's eyelids like a physical weight, the kind that made her wonder if she'd gone blind. The repairman's grip tightened. His breath was slow, controlled, like this was routine. "You shouldn't have opened the door," he whispered. Sarah's knees buckled. She thrashed, elbows jabbing backward, nails clawing at his arms, but he barely flinched. His body was a wall of muscle, his hold unbreakable. A sound. A click. The wrench, the knife. Her mind raced, picturing the layout of her apartment in frantic flashes. Door, kitchen, hallway, bedroom, fire escape. The hand over her mouth shifted, just enough. She bit down. A grunt, a curse, the grip loosened. Sarah tore free, stumbling forward, her shoulders slamming into the wall. She didn't stop to think. She ran. Down the hall, blind. Hands outstretched, fingers brushing doorframes, furniture, the edge of the couch. Behind her, footsteps heavy, deliberate. Sarah! Her name in his mouth made her stomach lurch. How did he know her name? The bathroom. She could lock herself in, call for help. She veered left, hands finding the doorframe, slamming the door shut behind her. The lock clicked just as a weight thudded against the other side. Then a laugh, lowsed. "You think that'll stop me?" Sarah fumbled for her phone. Where was it? Kitchen counter? Couch? God, please. A thump, the doorknob rattled. She dropped to the floor, back pressed against the door, legs braced. Her breaths came in ragged, silent sobs. Think. The window? The bathroom window was small, but she could fit. It led to the fire escape. She scrambled toward it, fingers clawing at the sill. The lock was stiff, rusted. Crack. The door shuttered behind her. One more kick and it would give. Sarah wrenched the window open. Cold rain slapped her face. She hauled herself up, shoulders squeezing through the frame. A hand closed around her ankle. She screamed, kicking backward, her heel connecting with something solid. A gasp of pain, the grip loosened. She tumbled onto the fire escape, the metal grating biting into her knees. Move. Sarah didn't look back. She took the stairs two at a time, the rusted steps shrieking under her weight. Above her, the bathroom window slammed open. "You're making this harder than it has to be." She hit the alleyway running. Rain blurred her vision. Her socks were soaked, her feet slipping on wet pavement. A car, a person. The street was empty. She ducked behind a dumpster, pressing a hand to her mouth to stifle her gasps. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure he'd hear it. Then, footsteps. Slow. Closer. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. Don't breathe. Don't move. A shadow stretched across the pavement in front of her. She was out of time. The shadow stopped moving. Sarah pressed her back against the dumpster, the cold metal seeping through her shirt. Rainwater trickled down her neck, mixing with sweat. Her lungs burned, but she didn't dare breathe. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then, a metallic clang as the wrench struck the dumpster just inches from her head. "Found you." Sarah lunged sideways, scrambling on all fours before finding her footing. She sprinted down the alley, her bare feet slapping against wet pavement. The street ahead was still empty. No cars, no open stores, just flickering streetlights and the relentless downpour. Behind her, boots splashed through puddles, gaining ground. She veered left, cutting between two buildings, her arms pumping. Think. Where's the closest place with people? The gas station. Half a mile east. Too far. A fence loomed ahead, chain link topped with barbed wire. She grabbed it, her fingers slipping on the wet metal, but she hauled herself up, the wire biting into her palms. A hand grabbed her calf. She kicked wildly, her heel connecting with his jaw. He snarled, grip loosening just enough. Sarah tumbled over the fence, landing hard on her side. Pain shot through her ribs, but she forced herself up, stumbling toward the glow of a convenience store sign in the distance. Almost there, almost safe. She risked a glance back. The repairman stood on the other side of the fence, watching her, not climbing, not running, just staring. Then slowly he smiled and pulled out his phone. Sarah's blood turned to ice. He wasn't done. The police found Sarah curled in a storage closet inside the convenience store, her fingers still locked around a jagged piece of broken glass. The repairman was gone. No fingerprints, no CCTV footage. The apartment manager swore no one had been sent to fix a leak. Sarah moved cities, changed her name, but sometimes late at night her phone would buzz with an unknown number, and when she answered, there was only breathing. Then a whisper, "You left the door unlocked." If you enjoyed this chilling tale of survival, don't forget to subscribe for more true nightmares lurking in the shadows. And remember, just because you think you're alone, doesn't mean you really are.
Next story.
Lily had always dreamed of living in a place where the walls weren't paper thin, where she couldn't hear every argument, every TV blaring, every creaking floorboard from the apartment above. So when she found the Ridgewood Heights complex, tucked away on the quieter side of town, she thought she'd finally found her sanctuary. The building was old but charming, with ivy crawling up the brick exterior and a wrought iron gate that gave it an almost Gothic elegance. The rent was affordable, the neighbors seemed polite but distant, perfect for someone who valued privacy. For the first few weeks, everything was blissfully normal. She unpacked her boxes, hung her framed prints of misty forests on the walls, and settled into a routine. Her job as a freelance graphic designer meant she worked odd hours, sometimes late into the night, and she appreciated the silence of the complex at those hours. But then she began to notice peculiarities. It started with the sounds. Every night, without fail, at exactly 2:17 a.m., she would hear the soft click of a door unlocking next door, apartment 302. Then footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving down the hallway. At first, she thought nothing of it. Maybe her neighbor worked night shifts, but then she realized she had never actually seen the man who lived there. She tried to catch a glimpse of him, peering through her peephole whenever she heard movement outside. Once she saw the back of a tall, broad-shouldered figure in a dark coat disappearing around the corner. Another time, she caught the faintest whiff of something metallic, coppery, almost like blood, lingering in the hallway after he passed. Her curiosity turned into unease. Then came the packages. Every few days, a new box would appear outside apartment 302. Plain brown cardboard, no return address, always delivered by a different courier. Lily never saw her neighbor bring them inside. They would simply vanish by morning. One evening, unable to resist, she crept into the hallway when she knew he wasn't home, or at least when she hoped he wasn't, and knelt beside one of the packages. It was light, but something shifted inside when she tilted it. A soft, wet thump. Her stomach twisted. That was the moment she should have called the police. But she didn't. Instead, she made a mistake. She knocked on his door. The man who answered was nothing like she expected. He was handsome, in a sharp, unsettling way. Dark hair, pale blue eyes that didn't quite reflect light, and a smile that didn't reach them. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice smooth. Lily's throat went dry. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm your neighbor, Lily. His smile widened. I've heard you moving around. I'm Daniel. They exchanged pleasantries, but the entire time Lily's skin prickled. His apartment behind him was immaculate, too clean. No personal photos, no clutter, just a single faint scent underneath the lemon cleaner. Something rotten. That night, she bolted her door for the first time. The next few days were a blur of paranoia. She started noticing things, small, horrifying details. The way Daniel would pause outside her door sometimes, just standing there, silent. The way her trash had been rifled through. The way her cat, who usually greeted her at the door, now hid under the bed, pupils blown wide with fear. Then the noises started inside her apartment. Scratching in the walls, a faint dripping sound behind the bathroom tiles. One night, she woke to the sensation of being watched, only to see the silhouette of a man standing in her doorway, backlit by the street lamp outside. She screamed. The figure vanished. Was it real, or had she imagined it? The breaking point came when she found the first note slipped under her door. I know you've been curious about me, Lily. Let's talk. Her hands shook. She called the police, but they dismissed her. No evidence of a break-in, they said. You're safe. She wasn't. That night, she decided to search his apartment while he was gone. Big mistake. The inside of apartment 302 was a nightmare. The walls were lined with newspaper clippings, missing women, all in their 20s, all with dark hair like hers. A workbench held tools, knives, saws, all meticulously cleaned, and in the corner, a large freezer hummed ominously. She didn't want to open it. But she did. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a woman's severed hand, the nails still painted pink. Lily stumbled back, bile rising in her throat. She had to get out, now. But then, the front door creaked open. Daniel was home. What followed was a desperate, breathless game of cat and mouse. She hid in the closet, listening to his footsteps draw closer. She stifled a sob as his shadow passed the door. She waited until he moved to the other room before bolting for the exit, only for him to grab her wrist at the last second. His grip was iron. You shouldn't have come in here, Lily, he whispered, breath hot against her ear. She fought, she screamed, she ran. Down the stairs, through the lobby, into the pouring rain outside. She didn't stop until she collapsed at a gas station miles away, sobbing to the clerk to call the police. When they finally searched Daniel's apartment, they found everything Lily described and more. The freezer held remains of at least 3 victims. The walls were a shrine to his crimes. But Daniel himself, gone, vanished into the night. And as Lily sat in the back of a police car, wrapped in a blanket, one terrible thought gnawed at her. He knew where she lived, and he had her keys. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling tale of Lily's terrifying encounter, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another dark story. And remember, lock your doors, check your windows, and trust your instincts, because you never really know who lives next door.
Next story.
The rain hammered against the window of Megan Harris's tiny apartment as she scrolled through yet another roommate ad, her fingers trembling with exhaustion. She'd been searching for weeks, ever since her last place fell through, and time was running out. The city was expensive, and her savings were dwindling fast. That's when she saw Jenna's post, room for rent in quiet, secure apartment. Must be clean, respectful, no drama, It was simple, unassuming, and most importantly, affordable. Their first meeting was almost too good to be true. Jenna was warm, with an easy smile and a calm demeanor that put Megan at ease instantly. The apartment was spotless, sunlight streaming through the windows, making the space feel safe. Jenna offered her coffee, asked about her job, even laughed at her nervous jokes. By the time Megan signed the lease, she felt like she'd hit the jackpot. The first few weeks were perfect. Jenna was considerate, always cleaning up after herself, never hogging the bathroom, even leaving little notes with cheerful reminders. Don't forget your umbrella, rain later. Megan started to relax, thinking she'd finally found a stable living situation. But then, the small things began to nag at her. Jenna had odd habits. She never left her bedroom door open, not even a crack. She'd disappear for hours without explanation, returning with shopping bags that she'd quickly stash in her room. And sometimes when Megan walked past Jenna's door late at night, she'd hear the faint sound of whispering, like Jenna was talking to someone, though the apartment was empty. Then came the night Megan's cat, Whiskers, darted into Jenna's room when the door was left ajar for just a second. Megan hesitated, then stepped inside, calling softly for him. The room was immaculate, almost sterile, no personal photos, no clutter. But as she crouched to check under the bed, her hand brushed against something cold and solid. A box. Metal with a small padlock. Her stomach twisted. It wasn't her business. She should leave it. But curiosity gnawed at her. She tugged lightly, and to her shock, the lock gave way, rusted or broken. Inside, nestled under a folded scarf, were driver's licenses. 5 of them. All different names, different women, but every photo was Jenna's face. Megan's breath caught in her throat. She dropped the lid, backing away, her pulse roaring in her ears. This wasn't just strange, it was wrong. She needed to get out, to think, but as she turned, she froze. Jenna stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Looking for something? The words were casual, but Jenna's eyes were dark, calculating. Megan forced a laugh, her voice too high. Whiskers got in here. I see. Jenna stepped forward, her smile never wavering. You know, it's rude to go through someone's things. Megan's skin prickled. She mumbled an apology, sidestepping toward the door, but Jenna moved too, blocking her path. For a heartbeat, they stood there, the air thick with tension. Then Jenna sighed, shaking her head. You're overworked, stressed. Maybe you didn't see what you thought you saw. The words slithered into Megan's mind, planting doubt. Had she imagined it? Maybe the licenses were old, maybe there was an explanation. But as she retreated to her room, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night she lay awake, listening. The apartment was too quiet. Then, a creak. Jenna's footsteps, slow and deliberate, pausing outside her door. Megan held her breath, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure Jenna could hear it. After an eternity, the footsteps retreated. The next morning, Jenna acted like nothing had happened, humming as she made coffee. But Megan noticed the way Jenna's gaze lingered on her, the way her fingers tapped rhythmically against the counter, like she was counting down to something. Megan needed answers. She waited until Jenna left for work, then dove back into the box. This time she dug deeper. Beneath the IDs was a newspaper clipping, a missing persons report. Emily Carter, 23, last seen leaving her apartment. The date was 6 months ago. The address listed was this one. Her blood turned to ice. She flipped through more clippings. Sarah Lynn, Rachel Moore, each one a former roommate, each one vanished without a trace. And every single one had lived here in this apartment with Jenna. A floorboard creaked behind her. Megan whirled around. Jenna stood there, her head tilted, a kitchen knife dangling casually from her hand. "I told you," she said softly. "You didn't see what you thought you saw." Megan bolted. Jenna moved like lightning, slashing at her as she scrambled for the front door. Pain seared through Megan's arm as the knife grazed her, but she didn't stop. She wrenched the door open, sprinting down the stairs, Jenna's laughter echoing behind her. She didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, until the sound of pursuit faded. Only then, collapsed in an alley, her breath ragged, did she allow herself to sob. The police found the box, they found the clippings, they even found traces of blood under the floorboards. But Jenna was gone. Megan moved cities, changed her name. But sometimes in the dead of night, she'll wake to the sound of whispering outside her window. And she'll wonder if she ever really escaped at all. If you enjoyed this chilling tale of deception and survival, don't forget to subscribe for more twisted stories that will haunt your dreams. And remember, just because your roommate seems normal doesn't mean they haven't already chosen their next victim. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.